The rise of the Ottoman Empire, from warriors to world power. From frontier beylik to rising power, the foundation and early conquests, circa 1299 to 1389. The early history of the Ottoman Empire begins in the late 13th century, in the frontier regions of northwestern Anatolia. It was here, amid the declining authority of the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum and the political vacuum left by the weakening Byzantine Empire, that a small Turkic principality known as the Ottoman Beylik emerged under the leadership of Osman I. Osman Gazi, the founder of the Ottoman dynasty, was a tribal chief of modest means. However, his strategic alliances with neighboring beyliks and his use of the Gazi, holy warrior, ethos helped legitimize his rule among other Turkic groups. The Ottomans presented themselves as both Islamic warriors fighting against the Byzantines and as pragmatic leaders who could incorporate diverse peoples and traditions under their rule. This dual identity became one of the defining features of the empire. Under Osman's son, Orhan Gazi, the Ottomans transitioned from a nomadic frontier principality into a structured and expanding state. The conquest of Bursa in 1326, which became the first capital of the Ottoman state, marked a major milestone. The establishment of administrative institutions, including a standing army, the early form of the Janissaries, laid the foundations for centralized rule. By the time of Murad I's reign, 1362 to 1389, the Ottomans had crossed into Europe via the Dardanelles and began an aggressive campaign in the Balkans. Edirne, Adrianople, was captured and declared the new capital in 1369, symbolizing the shift of Ottoman ambitions toward Europe. Victories at the Battle of Maritsa, 1371, and the Battle of Kosovo, 1389, demonstrated the military effectiveness of the Ottomans and their ability to challenge established Christian powers in the region. This period represents not only the territorial expansion of the Ottoman state but also the ideological and administrative transformation of the Beylik into a rising empire. What began as a small frontier principality was rapidly evolving into a formidable regional power, one that would soon shake the foundations of both the Byzantine and Balkan worlds. The conquest of Constantinople and the Classical Age, imperial expansion and the Golden Century, 1453 to 1566. The conquest of Constantinople in 1453 by Sultan Mehmed II, known as Mehmed the Conqueror, was a watershed moment in world history and a defining event in the rise of the Ottoman Empire. With the fall of the Byzantine capital, the Ottomans not only gained a strategic and symbolic stronghold but also claimed the legacy of Rome and the Eastern Roman Empire. Mehmed immediately set out to restore and transform the ancient city into the new imperial capital, Istanbul, blending Islamic architecture, Byzantine heritage, and Turkish administration. This moment marked the beginning of what historians often refer to as the Ottoman Classical Age, a period of rapid expansion, centralized governance, and cultural flourishing. Under Mehmed and his successors, the Ottomans expanded their empire across 3 continents, dominating Southeast Europe, Western Asia, and North Africa. The empire's administrative structure became more sophisticated, with a strong legal framework, the canon, a powerful bureaucracy, and a professional standing army, the Janissaries, serving as the core of military strength. Sultan Selim I, r. 1512 to 1520, also known as Selim the Grim, significantly expanded the empire eastward and southward. In a series of lightning campaigns, he defeated the Safavid Empire in the Battle of Calderon, 1514, and conquered the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt in 1517. With the capture of the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, the Ottomans gained control over the Islamic heartlands and claimed the caliphate, solidifying their role not just as a political empire, but as the spiritual leaders of the Sunni Muslim world. The empire reached its zenith under the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent, r. 1520 to 1566, whose leadership marked the true golden century of Ottoman power. Militarily, Suleiman led campaigns deep into Central Europe, capturing Belgrade, 1521, Rhodes, 1522, and most notably achieving victory at the Battle of Mohacs, 1526, which led to Ottoman dominance over Hungary. His navy, under the command of famed Admiral Barbarossa, established Ottoman naval supremacy in the Mediterranean. However, Suleiman's greatness was not limited to military achievements. Known in the Islamic world as Suleiman the Lawgiver, Kanuni, he oversaw major legal reforms that harmonized Sharia law with secular administrative codes. This created a more unified and consistent legal system across the vast empire. The classical Ottoman state took full shape during this period, with its peak institutions, a well-organized tax system, elite palace schools, the court of the Grand Vizier, and a flourishing of arts and architecture under the direction of chief architect Mimar Sinan. The classical age was characterized by more than conquests, it was a period of imperial consolidation, architectural splendor, and administrative brilliance. The empire's borders stretched from the gates of Vienna to the Persian Gulf, and from the steppes of Ukraine to the deserts of Arabia. The Ottomans had fully transformed into one of the most powerful and sophisticated empires in the early modern world, influencing the course of global history for centuries to come. Transformation and modernization, reforms, reorganization, and the struggle for global power, 1566 to 1789. Following the death of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent in 1566, the Ottoman Empire entered a new phase marked not by rapid conquest, but by internal transformation, shifting balances of power, and the challenge of maintaining a vast, multi-ethnic empire in an evolving geopolitical landscape. While the classical structures of the empire remained intact, growing military, political, and economic pressures led to significant institutional change and the early stirrings of modernization. In the immediate post-Suleiman period, the empire experienced a gradual decentralization of power. Provincial governors and local elites, many of them powerful military leaders or tax-farming magnates, gained increasing autonomy. The central authority of the Sultan and the imperial court began to weaken, leading to rising corruption, administrative inefficiency, and factionalism within the palace. Meanwhile, the once elite Janissary corps, previously known for their discipline and loyalty, began to decline in quality and became involved in politics and commerce, further eroding the strength of the central state. Yet this era was far from one of total stagnation. In the 17th century, the Koprolov family of Grand Viziers initiated a series of strong reforms aimed at restoring the administrative and military effectiveness of the empire. Under Koprolov Mehmed Pasha and his son Koprolov Fazıl Ahmed Pasha, the Ottoman state experienced a temporary resurgence. Military campaigns in Central Europe and internal reforms provided a glimpse of revitalized strength, even as broader structural issues persisted. One of the defining characteristics of this period was the Ottoman Empire's continued rivalry with rising European powers. The 1683 siege of Vienna, in which the Ottomans attempted to take the Habsburg capital, marked a turning point. Its failure led to the Great Turkish War and the signing of the Treaty of Karlowitz, 1699, which resulted in significant territorial losses in Central Europe. For the first time, the Ottomans were no longer expanding but defending their borders. This marked the beginning of the empire's strategic shift from conquest to consolidation and diplomacy. Amid these military and political challenges, the Ottomans began to engage with new ideas and technologies from Europe. The Tulip Era, 1718 to 1730, named after the elite fascination with tulip cultivation, symbolized a brief period of cultural openness, artistic experimentation, and increased contact with Western Europe. Ottoman elites adopted elements of European art, architecture, and even court fashion. Printing presses, foreign embassies, and the spread of books signaled the early signs of an intellectual awakening, though the reforms remained limited in scope and often faced strong resistance from conservative factions. In the mid-18th century, reform-minded sultans such as Selim III initiated more serious efforts to modernize the empire's military and administration. These efforts, known collectively as the Nizam-i Sedid, New Order, introduced European-style military training, new uniforms, and updated artillery. Selim also reorganized the treasury and attempted to create a professional, centralized army loyal to the state rather than to local power brokers. However, these reforms faced stiff opposition from entrenched interest groups, especially the Janissaries, and were only partially successful. By 1789, as the French Revolution shook Europe, the Ottoman Empire stood at a crossroads. It remained a major world power in terms of territory, culture, and population, but its outdated institutions and resistance to structural change left it vulnerable to further decline. Still, the seeds of modernization had been planted, and the empire's long struggle to reform itself in the face of European ascendance would dominate its trajectory throughout the 19th century. This period, though marked by decline in military dominance, was one of adaptive transformation, an era in which the Ottomans wrestled with preserving their imperial identity while slowly recognizing the necessity of change in order to survive in a rapidly modernizing world.